Good afternoon, Alaska. And we're having a press conference today on some recent actions of the Biden administration as they pertain to Alaska and, quite frankly, the harm that they do to Alaska. So just a little bit of history. Under the last administration, under President Trump, there was a concerted effort to provide opportunities for Alaska, especially in our resource development sphere, as well as potential of international railroad crossings between the border between Alaska and Canada. That has ceased under this new administration. And I just want to highlight a series of the most recent attempts at undermining Alaska's ability to fulfill its role in the Union of 50 states under a federalist system, as well as being able to provide revenue, jobs, opportunity, wealth for its people. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And we also have some representatives from the various industries in the state of Alaska that have been affected and will be affected. And quite frankly, we're going to talk about also what our attempts are going to be to push back on this, because we just think it's simply wrong. It's bad for Alaska, and quite frankly, it's bad for the entire world, and we'll explain that here in a moment. But since January, when President Biden came into office, a number of decisions have been made that directly impact Alaska, and in the opinion of many of us, not for the better. So, for example, today, the Biden administration, the EPA, is filing legal proceedings to restart the Clean Water Act, the 404C veto process for Bristol Bay, undoing the work of the past administration. Preemptive vetoes of any type, or for any project, of any permit by any company, is dangerous and will be opposed by our state because of the precedents that will set. Just yesterday, the Biden administration announced plans to alter the entire NPRA development plan, the entire plan. We've got a situation where they're going to be trying to cancel ANWR leases, stopping all new leases on federal public lands for oil and gas. We have a reversing of the roadless rule in the Tongass National Forest, changing waters of the United States, trying to control more land and water within Alaska. The 3030 program, which essentially will lock up not just land, but waters around Alaska if it ever takes place in the form and fashion that some folks want it to. The attempts are also undermining Alaska's mineral potential. And this is an interesting one, because the mineral potential, along with oil and gas, and really any resource extraction that we do here in Alaska, is really done under the best environmental regulations you're going to find anywhere. And really what's at the heart here is that this administration, for reasons that I and many others don't understand, believes that if you stop projects from happening here in America, here in Alaska, that somehow that saves the environment, that somehow the demand for these resources will magically appear from other places in which the environment will not be harmed, in which, for example, child labor issues will not be impacted. And quite honestly, it doesn't make any sense for folks that are following this. The demand for oil and gas will still be there. The demand for rare earths, critical minerals, metals will still be there. The demand for timber will still be there. So the demand for what Alaska has to offer within the confines of the United States, within our borders, that could help create jobs here in Alaska, create wealth here in Alaska, create revenue here in Alaska, create opportunities not just for the state but local economies as well as businesses, is somehow viewed as problematic by this administration and those that support the administration's actions. But what you never hear, what is never discussed, is if we don't do it here and we do it over there, what does over there look like when we do it over there? Because we have no control over the actions of foreign countries. We have no control over the actions of corporations that are extracting resources outside of Alaska, outside of America, and overseas. You can only imagine, and if we're all going to be honest, we know for a fact that in many of these locales where these resources are being extracted to once again meet the demands that will always be there, the environment is not being preserved. The environment is not being saved. Wealth is really, in many cases, being created for foreign actors that aren't necessarily friends of the United States. This does not help our national security. And so the question that we have really for this administration is why and when will it stop? What's the end game? What's the goal? Is the goal to turn Alaska into a subsidiary of the Department of Interior? Is the goal to weaken Alaska and America by depending upon foreign actors, many of which are not friends of the United States, for our national security, our key metals, minerals, oil and gas? So quite frankly, a lot of this makes no sense at all. It would be akin, for example, if the Biden administration said, let's say to the state of Washington, we're going to authorize that the Army Corps of Engineers tear down the 23 plus dams on the Columbia and the Snake River, that the manufacturing of airlines is detrimental to the environment, and that wheat farming is also detrimental to the environment. So we're going to do everything we can to stop it. I would imagine that it wouldn't take very long for the folks in the state of Washington, including the Seattle City Council, to register their outrage at trying to destroy a state within this federal system. And that's what's happening with Alaska. And the irony, as we've mentioned before, with regard to Alaska is simply this. In order for us to become a state, the discussions in the formation of our Statehood Act really compelled us to collectivize our resources under the government to be developed to pay our way. And really that's all we're asking, is let's follow what the Statehood Act laid out, our own Constitution, and quite frankly, what really is a key component in making Alaska a viable state is to be able to create opportunities for its people, create opportunities in wealth, revenue, preserve the environment. I think it's hard to argue that the environment is going to be best preserved overseas as opposed to here in Alaska with our regulations. And so we are going to continue the process of pushing back against the Biden administration. Well, what does this mean? Is it just words? No, it's not. We want to thank the legislature that approved the $4 million in funding to fight for our state defense, our ability to carry out our ability to develop our resources, as once again lined out in the Statehood Act as well as the Constitution of Alaska. We're going to be asking for the legislature, unfortunately, for even more funding because we don't see any end to this. We see this continuing and probably gathering steam. So in essence, you have the 49th state that is fighting its own federal government in an effort for the 49th state, Alaska, to be able to fulfill its destiny as one of the states within the federal system, to be able to create opportunities for its own people and provide revenue for its government. This can't be understated. And we know there's a lot of groups, a lot of entities that are not necessarily located in the state of Alaska that are cheering the Biden administration on. But we can tell you that there are a lot of Alaskans and a lot of organizations and a lot of trade associations that are not cheering this on. And so once again, we want to highlight what's occurring, what has recently occurred. Unfortunately, we believe this is just the beginning. This is the beginning of this administration. But we're going to do everything we can to stand up and face this challenge because we believe we're right. We believe that if you truly want to protect the environment, do it here in Alaska, do it here in America. If you're truly sincere about providing opportunities and jobs for Americans and Alaskans, you do it here. If you're truly committed to creating wealth and providing for our national security, so we don't have to rely on some of these foreign actors, you do it here. Everything would lead one to believe it should be done here. And that's what we're employing the Biden administration to really think about. And in the meantime, we're going to gear up for what is going to be, unfortunately, a long slog in the courts to deal with a number of these issues. And so with that, we're going to have a number of representatives from the various industries in the state of Alaska come up and make some comments as well. So we're going to start with Katie Capozzi with the Alaska Chamber, And we're going to go through a whole list of other folks, and when we're done at the end, we'll take some questions.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Governor, for inviting the Alaska Chamber to offer some remarks today. My name is Katie Capozzi, and I serve as the President and CEO of the Alaska Chamber. For those of you who are unaware, the Alaska Chamber is a business statewide association. We have members all across the state of Alaska, many small businesses, 60% of a matter of fact, representing all industries and economic sectors. Our mission at the Alaska Chamber is to promote a healthy business environment in Alaska. And unfortunately, it seems we have a federal administration that is dead set in accomplishing the exact opposite. This NPRA plan review announced on Tuesday, today's EPA 404C announcement today, is just the latest in a recent barrage of heavy-handed federal policies that are aimed specifically at Alaska and threaten our ability to produce jobs, revenue, and opportunity for all. Our economy is suffering. We haven't even come close to recovering from the economic damage caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. And these short-sighted actions are a continuous kick to the gut while we try to navigate our way through through recovery. Not even growth or economic prosperity, which is what the Alaska Chamber is all about and focused on, just recovery. So I'll conclude by pivoting inward a little bit towards Alaska and offer this final thought. In this unfortunate and volatile federal environment, it is critical that Alaska policymakers do everything within their power to help us recover. And you can help us recover by providing a predictable, stable, and competitive investment climate in Alaska. And Governor, thank you for everything that you're doing to do that for us. With that, I will turn it over to Deantha Crockett with the Alaska Miners Association. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor, for inviting the Alaska Miners Association to participate in this today. My name is Deantha Skabinski. I'm the Executive Director of the Alaska Miners Association. The Alaska Miners Association has been around for over 80 years. We represent all aspects of the mining industry, from the very small multi-generation family-owned placer mines up to the very large operations that are throughout our state and contribute significantly to our economy. All of which we work together to promote responsible mineral development across our state for the benefit of our state. It's a role I'm very proud to be in. I was born and raised in Alaska, and I think many of us that have been in Alaska as long as I have always understood the value of our resource economy and how absolutely critical it is for us to be able to develop our resources to sustain ourselves. It's why we were admitted to the union, was because Alaska's resource wealth was known to be able to provide for a long-term sustainable economy across our state. So today we saw the EPA make the announcement that they would be taking steps to protect, and I'm deliberately using air quotes there, the Bristol Bay region by reinstating the 404C process underneath the Clean Water Act. This is a step taken despite the fact that last year we saw an environmental impact statement that was developed with significant input by the EPA that concluded that Pebble could be done safely and without harm to the fisheries and the water resources there. So here we have this egregious step taking place. We're looking at an asset on state of Alaska land worth hundreds of billions of dollars to our state that is being taken off our table at the same time that we have legislators down in Juneau debating what we can do to diversify our economy, to add more revenue sources, to fix our gigantic fiscal crisis. So I wish that it was just Pebble, and it's not just Pebble for the resource industries. I think you'll hear my colleagues today, and you've certainly heard Katie from the Chamber say that we have seen a death by 1,000 cuts from this administration, and this is just, the Pebble instance is one more piece of evidence that we don't think the Biden administration wants Alaska to have a healthy economy. We saw immediately in the beginning of this administration the Department of Interior issue new directives that severely hampered placer mining operations, small mom and pop, small business operations that could not move forward with some of their planning in order to continue what they've been doing for generations, far beyond statehood, far beyond any of our lifetimes in this room. We then saw a massive change to the waters of the U.S., and I believe that'll get discussed later. But the waters of the U.S. policy that significantly burdens anyone doing business near a waterway in Alaska, which I think would be pretty much anybody. And a number of other issues that just continue to come out from this administration that ask us, and certainly gives us pause at the mining industry to wonder, what is President Biden doing? He started this administration with very lofty goals about the pursuit of renewable energies, none of which can be done without the industries that are operating in Alaska. But it's clear he doesn't want our industries to be part of that solution. He doesn't want the minerals to come from Alaska, and he doesn't want that development to take place and provide jobs and provide millions of dollars of revenue to our state and the nation. It's sad because, as the governor said, we do a tremendous job of developing Alaska's resources in complete compatibility with the environment. And it's sad because it's denying Americans the opportunity. So with that, I'll wrap up. Thank you, Governor, very much, I would say, not only for today, but for the pushing back that your administration is doing to help us continue to support our members and our livelihoods and contribute to the state. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rebecca Logan, and I'm the CEO for the Alaska Support Industry Alliance. And I, too, Governor, would like to thank you for the opportunity today to join with all these people and talk about the impacts of the Biden administration's decisions. I guess I'll start off by borrowing a quote from a friend of mine. I heard her say a couple months ago when she said, "We can't build back better if we can't build." And that's where we're at today. I represent the companies that provide support to oil, gas, and mining in the state of Alaska. And since 2015, my members have laid off 6,000 people. 6,000 people from our trade association members. And those are the highest paying jobs in the state of Alaska. And now that we have the opportunity to start clawing our way back from a pandemic and from low oil prices, we find that we have this huge barrier to building back in the federal government and the Biden administration. This state needs more oil in the pipeline, we need more jobs, and we need more revenue. And one project in NPRA can take care of the majority of that problem, and yet we're being stopped from proceeding by the Biden administration. So we're thrilled that the governor is taking such an aggressive stance and fighting back, and I would just encourage all Alaskans to join the governor and our organizations in doing the same, because it impacts every one of us. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Governor, for inviting myself and my colleagues to speak today against federal overreach. My name is Marliana Hall, and I'm the Executive Director for the Resource Development Council for Alaska. RDC has, for 46 years, advocated for responsible resource development across our state. My members include fishing, forestry, mining, oil and gas, tourism, the 12 land-owning Alaska Native corporations, organized labor, local communities, industry support firms, and thousands of Alaskans who want to support responsible resource development. I echo the comments of my colleagues who have spoke today, but I'll add that the continual anti-development announcements follow the Biden administration's already well-established pattern of assuming excessive administrative authority, whether it is the roadless rule in Southeast Alaska, oil and gas leasing and development on the North Slope, or overreach by way of goals like the 30 by 30 goal. The threat of federal overreach on major projects, either community or resource development projects within Alaska, is very real and threatens Alaskans and our economy. Once again, federal politics are playing yo-yo, whether it's Eskimo yo-yo or regular yo-yo, with the livelihood of Alaskans. Alaskans deserve regulatory certainty and access to the abundant resources that surround them in order to create local jobs, develop resources, and support opportunities, especially as the economy struggles to recover from the effects of the pandemic. Thank you again, Governor, for the opportunity to share our continued dismay with federal overreach and for your efforts and the efforts of the state of Alaska to push back. And now I welcome Kara Moriarty from the Alaska Oil and Gas Association.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Governor, for inviting all of us here today. My name is Kara Moriarty, and I'm the President and CEO of the Alaska Oil and Gas Association, often called AOGA. Our mission is to advocate for the long-term viability of the oil and gas industry in the state. Alaska's oil and gas industry is the largest private sector industry in Alaska, and it still accounts for over 25% of all jobs and wages in the state, and is still the largest tax and royalty payer to Alaska. The most recent decision by the Biden administration to review the Integrated Activity Plan, or the IAP, in the MPRA is very concerning. The IAP is a well-considered decision that did not happen overnight and is fully compliant with all applicable laws. Regulatory decisions must have predictability, and they should not be subjected to the political whims of changing administrations. This administration seems to be determined to stymie production and slow economic recovery across the country, while asking foreign countries to increase production. This most recent decision, coupled with all the other forces trying to stop development, such as the current Congress considering right now billions of dollars in tax increases on our industry, all of this together reiterates why it is more important than ever for the state to provide fiscal and regulatory stability. It is ironic to me that this press conference today, the governor probably didn't plan it this way, but the press conference is being held between two legislative hearings where legislators have proposed what is being characterized as moderate increases in taxes. Just a tweak, just small changes. The bill that was heard this morning, for example, would increase our production taxes by 46 to 95%, depending on the year. That is not modest, that is not a tweak, and that is not a small change. The potential for increased taxes in Alaska is real and is honestly the most immediate and pressing impediment to investment in Alaska. So the last thing this industry needs, or any of the industries here today needs, is more review, more taxes, or more regulations. Because of the barrage of outside attacks by this administration and others, Alaska should be doing everything it can on a state level to keep all of our industries stable and competitive. We are lucky to have a strong congressional delegation back in D.C. fighting for us, and Governor Dunleavy here leading the charge at home. So thanks again, Governor, and we applaud you and your efforts to push back on these outside forces.
So thank you, folks. So Jeff, now we'll open up for some questions, and if there's industry-specific questions, we'll have some of these folks come up and answer them.
Okay, thanks, Governor. We're going to start here in the room. We'll take a question from Elwood Bremer with the Alaska Journal of Commerce. Elwood?
Right, Governor. I guess one can debate whether the Biden administration or you are right or wrong on these issues, but I don't think any of this was.
I think we're right, Elwood, but that's okay.
Yeah. I don't think anybody would say that this was a lot of this was unexpected. So what, shortly before you took office, or what have you been doing, maybe other than just suing, which is an avenue everybody takes, to work with the administration or try to find different approaches?
So it's been very difficult to get an audience with this administration, to be perfectly honest with you. By this time within the Trump administration, I had met personally with President Trump probably 4 times, talking about Alaska. The discussions usually went along the lines of, what can we do to increase opportunity in Alaska? Usually those words exactly. What do you need in Alaska to help with jobs, business, industry? Because the last administration was really focused on making America independent of its foreign actors to a large degree. So in answer to your question, it's been very difficult to get an audience with this administration. The Secretary of the Interior, once again, canceled a trip to come up here, so that makes it difficult. And so we are working through the avenues that are available to us. We work with our federal delegation. They have conversations on our behalf with the Biden administration and individuals within Congress. But at the state level, we have to be the voice of reason. We have to be the canary in the mine. This is what's happening to Alaska is just the beginning. And what's happening on state lands, because we'll probably get a question here in just a moment. Well, isn't this mostly on state lands? It is, but it's bleeding over into federal lands. It's now bleeding over into state lands. So within the borders of Alaska, there is an all-out assault. I don't think anyone can characterize it any differently, because that's what's happening. There's an all-out assault on the very nature of Alaska. So in answer to your question, Elwood, would love to have a conversation. If we thought we've tried, and we will continue to try, but if we thought for one moment that sitting down and saying, hey, this is a bad idea and here's why, would work, we would be taking that route. We've tried to take that route. But absent of an audience, absent of a dialogue, absent of the federal government, which, quite frankly, and I don't want to get into a political history here, has strayed way far from its original purpose, is now telling us what we can do in the state of Alaska after admitting us in '59 under the concept that we would develop our resources to pay our way. So we're really left with little choice but to litigate, is where we're at right now.
Okay, now we're going to go to questions from the teleconference line. Just a reminder for the reporters online, feel free to ask questions of the 5 industry trade representatives we have here in the room with Governor Dunleavy. We'll take our first question from Becky Bohr, Associated Press in Juneau. Becky?
Hi, Jeff. Governor, thanks for the time. I have a 2-part question. At the start of this news conference regarding Bristol Bay, you had mentioned that today's announcement is undoing the work of the past administration. But under the past administration, we had a record of decision from the Corps that rejected key authorizations for this. So I'm wondering how this isn't maybe just a further continuation of what we saw at the end of that of the Trump administration on this project.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment, and you are correct. It was my belief that we would be able to work through those issues that came up with the Army Corps, to be perfectly honest with you. But you're right. It began. This particular issue began at that point. I was confident in my discussions with the administration that we could work through those issues to make sure that if that project was to take the next step, that the environmental regulations, the engineering, the structure, et cetera, would be compatible with the environmental regulations and the expectations that Alaskans have. But it's pretty much going to this particular project. What is happening to this project ends up being a precedent when you do a 404C veto process. It becomes problematic for many of the other resource extraction mining plays that we have.
Excuse me, it feels very strange to kick the governor off of his podium. Becky, this is Diantha Skabinski from the Alaska Miners Association. I'd just like to add on to that, if you wouldn't mind. I'll go on. So, to just provide a little bit of background, and I think most of you in the room know this, but I want to make sure that the various listenerships around know this. When you start to do something like a major industrial development, like a mining project, the National Environmental Policy Act prescribes a very lengthy environmental impact statement process. And in that, it starts very early on with the scoping period, where you solicit a lot of different information from various members of the public and agencies. You end up bringing the science that has been undertaken, and you develop a draft environmental impact statement that outlines alternatives that should be selected, whether the project should move forward or not, and if it should be altered. And ultimately, an agency ends up with a final environmental impact statement. And what we saw in the previous administration and at the Pebble project was an EIS that concluded it could be done safely. So you can imagine our surprise when you saw a record of decision, yes, under a previous administration, where it was completely contradictory to their earlier, not that much, pretty recent decision that it could be done safely. So I think that's an important distinction to make in the context of your question of this is different. So today when we have EPA come out and say we are reverting to this 404C process that was previously done, the previous administration removed their determination that the 404C process should happen. We are going to continue today that it should happen, is still contradictory from the scientific process that took place. So thank you for letting me add that.
Okay, let's take our next question on Liz Ruskin with Alaska Public Media. Liz?
Yes, thank you. Governor, are you convinced the Pebble mine, as Pebble proposed it in its permit application, would not damage the fisheries of Bristol Bay?
No, I'm not convinced. until we go through the whole process to determine how this thing is going to be engineered, what it's going to be, what it's actually going to look like. So the whole concept of the study process, permitting process, I think is important. So I'm never convinced that a particular project or play will absolutely not have an impact, but we need to be able to go through the process to really look at the studies, look at the science and the engineering, and then we can come up with, I think, some conclusions as to whether a particular project is worth pursuing.
But didn't Pebble go through that process with the permit application?
I think there was more discussion, more engineering. There was more discussion that was going to take place with the state of Alaska and with other federal agencies. And I think what happened here today has the real opportunity to really set this back. So there's a real possibility that this $1 trillion worth of wealth may never get an opportunity to go through a process in which it's developed according to science and regulations that will safeguard the environment.
Okay, thanks for the question, Liz. Now let's go to Peter Siegel with the Juneau Empire. Peter?
Hi, thank you. Governor, you've pointed out that Alaska has some of the best standards for resource extraction in the world. Is that not because of regulations like this? And though there are regulations that exist in Alaska's own statutes, those could be potentially removed in the future, especially as more projects get going. So aren't these kinds of regulations what makes mining in Alaska the highest safety standard in the world?
Well, yeah, Peter, thank you. So what we're talking about here is a series of canceling of projects and opportunity across the board: oil, gas, mining, timber, across the board. The very essence, the very heart of what Alaska, once again, does better than any other place, I believe, on the planet. And so regulations, are they necessary? Absolutely. That's what we were saying. We have the best regulations, we believe, on the planet to be able to produce, explore, develop our resources. But as you can see, what's happening since this administration came into office is just a nonstop series of canceling all kinds of opportunities that we believe could be done in a manner consistent with the environmental regulations, the expectations that Americans, Alaskans have. But that's not, if this continues, that's not going to happen. What's going to end up happening is these things will be delayed. Investment will go overseas where they don't have these environmental protections. That's the issue. And that's something that we all really need to consider.
Okay, now let's go to the Kenai Peninsula for a question from Anthony Moore with KSRM Radio. Anthony?
Thank you, Governor. This question not only is for you, but I'd like thoughts on this question from any of the other industry reps in the room, if you guys would like to chime in. My question: by taking the Biden administration to court regarding Alaska's resource development, what are you prepared to do if, keyword, if, you don't get a favorable outcome in court? Thank you.
Well, I guess if you're talking about unfavorable outcomes across the board, that becomes hugely problematic for the future of the state, to be perfectly honest with you. We believe that within the Statehood Compact and the Statehood Act, and we believe that within our Constitution are the tools that can navigate through these lawsuits that are going to happen. We believe that in the past we've had negotiations or discussions, and as one of the reporters brought up, what are you doing now in terms of discussions? We can't even have a discussion with this administration. They're not interested. And so we have little choice, but we believe that we have the Constitution, both the U.S. and the state Constitution, on our side. And we believe that we have history on our side with regard to the discussions as to how and why Alaska becomes a state and how and why it develops its resources. So I'm pretty confident that if we have a robust approach to dealing with the federal government at this level, that we will we will get a number of outcomes that I think will be in Alaska's favor.
Okay, let's go back to Gino for our last two questions. We'll start with James Brooks with the Anchorage Daily News.
Yes, question for the AOGA representative, I believe. There was a remark about the tax proposals being considered in the legislature right now, and I'm curious about the context of that, because here in the legislature the proposal has been to increase taxes in order to avoid drawing from the permanent fund, avoid cuts to the dividend, and avoid cuts to state services. So is AOGA proposing to do those things instead of raising taxes?
James, thank you for the question. Our organization does not have a position on what the state's proposal should be on funding the dividend or state services. We've never taken a position on that in the 16 plus years that I've worked for the association. All I can say and respond to are the proposals that are being considered on our industry. And there are two different bills that are being heard today. They both deal with changing the per barrel tax credit in various ways. And we've seen one fiscal note and taking a look at that fiscal note and analyzing what that fiscal note is compared to what we currently pay in taxes. In our view, a 46 to 90% increase in our production tax is not a small change. And I sympathize with the governor and the legislature and the challenge that is before them to meet the various needs. But all of us here are representing businesses and industries, and those increases will have an impact, especially when you consider what the governor brought us here to talk about. We are facing challenges from the federal administration. We are facing challenges from banks who don't want to invest in the Arctic anymore. We're facing challenges in Congress where they're actually proposing billions of dollars in tax increases across the nation. So yes, we feel like we're being attacked in every manner, and adding what's being referred to as a small or modest change will have an impact on investment decisions, and it's our responsibility to share that with the legislature and the public.
Okay, thanks, James, for that question. Let's wrap things up with the question from Sean McGuire with Alaska's News Source. Sean?
Hello, Governor. Thank you very much for taking the time. I have a question that's just been passed on to me with breaking news that the President has asked that OSHA require employers with more than 100 workers to mandate vaccinations or regular testing, which could impact, we're told, around 100 million Americans. I'm asking what your thoughts are on that and if you're going to do anything in response.
So I'm just hearing about this now, so it's something that we're going to have to understand and look into. So it's difficult to answer at this point. I can get back to you guys, but this is, as you said, apparently it's breaking news. So I just want to wrap up.
Sorry, could I also just ask quickly about the Statehood Defense Initiative?
Sure.
You've asked for more money about that, but I'm just curious there was $4 million appropriated back in a couple of months ago. I'm trying to work out why it needs more money and what it's achieved.
Yeah, good question, Sean. We're just projecting down the road at the speed and magnitude of the projects that are being impacted by the Biden administration. We are basically projecting that we'll probably need more assistance, or at least have that in the bank if we need to draw upon it. But we can't just nibble around the edges. These projects that are being impacted, as was mentioned, create hundreds, if not more, jobs. Each of these particular projects, even thousands. The revenue is enormous. The wealth created is enormous. And every project we don't get, it'd be a different ballgame if this was a California or Texas where a project is canceled. It has a much more robust and diversified economy. Ours is a resource extraction state, currently is. We're doing everything we can to diversify the economy, but nonetheless, we have to be prepared for litigation that if this is the first 9-10 months of this administration, you can only imagine what's going to happen here in the next 3 years, so we have to be prepared for that. and be willing to do everything we can to fight for Alaska to become a viable state and to fight for Alaska to make sure that we have a future for our kids and grandkids. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming here. I want to thank the industry representatives for being here. This is a serious issue for Alaska. You rarely see things like Save Delaware or Save Rhode Island, Save Indiana, save it from themselves. We have to intervene in those states so that there's no more steel production because that'll ruin the environment, or there's no more corporate law offices going to go up in Delaware because this may have an impact on the social fabric of that state. You don't see that happening. You see it happen in Alaska constantly. That our state is being treated, in my opinion, much differently than other states are being treated by the federal government. And I get it. I came from an East Coast state. I came from Pennsylvania. I came from Scranton, Pennsylvania. It was a coal mining town. Produced a lot of wealth, but I get the understanding and the concern that the environment may be impacted. But I can assure people that if they ever went to Anwar, if they ever go to Red Dog Mine, which is difficult to get there, and not too many people probably will go there, they'll see and they'll be surprised at how well we take care of the environment, that the environment is not an afterthought, that the environment is front and center. And so a lot of these folks that want to, quote, save Alaska from itself, in many cases have not been to these places I just named. Some of them have never been to Alaska. So I would ask those individuals, but I'm also going to once again implore the Biden administration, let's have a dialogue as to really what you're trying to accomplish here. If you truly are interested in saving the environment, again, I think there's a clear argument to be made that it should be done here in the United States. It should be done here in Alaska, if that truly is your goal. Because if it is, sending this stuff overseas, I can almost guarantee you, is not going to be good for the environment. And it's not going to be good necessarily for the societies of some of these places where these resources will be extracted. And so would love to have a conversation with individuals in the agencies in this administration. But make no mistake about it. The state of Alaska is dependent upon resource extraction. This country is dependent upon resource extraction. This way of life, this civilization, is dependent upon resource extraction. And we do it better here in Alaska than anywhere else. And so this is a fight for this state's future. This is a fight for our kids and grandkids. It's a fact. I'm not being melodramatic. It's an absolute fact. You can't shut down a state's method by which it creates jobs, opportunity, and wealth and expect it to be a viable state. And I hope that's not the plan. As I mentioned earlier when I opened this press conference, I hope it's not the plan to send Alaska into receivership. We're just the few folks that can afford it can fly to Alaska, hop into their helicopters, and tool around and see a beautiful place. Alaska can be much more, and Alaska can be both. And it's Alaskans that are going to ensure that that happens. We need opportunities in Alaska, not canceling opportunities. We need to do it here in Alaska. And again, we're going to do everything we can to fight for Alaska. That's my job as governor. That's the jobs of these representatives of the industries, to fight for Alaska. Remember what our motto is. It's not south to opportunity, it's north to the future. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we have opportunity and that the state of Alaska remains and continues to grow as a viable state within the federal framework of the United States. So I want to thank you, and I'm sure we'll be reporting more out on this topic as time goes on.